Hey everybody in my book group. This is going to be for our group discussion board for 6-4 on world building. Just another thing I'd like to point out that I don't know if anybody actually remembers. I think I'm the only person in the group, so I always let the title be known. So I'm in the middle of, or actually I'm actually finishing up. I'm on the last couple of chapters of Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert Hensley. So one of the things in the story that I've noticed, if we're going to be going down the list and answering, like what elements of young adult romance and speculative fiction genre tropes are present in the novel that I'm reading. So I remember last time we were doing the discussion board post for this for the book group. Where I'm at now, I had to go back and I made little notes in my book. I literally got the book from the library, and I need to kind of find it because I can't find it, and it's going to be doing a little bit. But I remember in chapter 22, or right before chapter 22, the two characters, or yeah, the two characters, Mike, and then one of the female, one of the major female protagonists in the story. I can't remember her name for the life of me right now. But they get they go outside and they take time to spend time with each other, and they go out there to have a little bit of a talk, and they kind of have a little picnic out there. I think they literally got a tray of cold chicken and went out there on the lawn because that was something that Mike over time in the story actually came to like was cold chicken and sitting outside on the warmer nights. Well, for him, he was a Martian, so he didn't feel the cold. Everybody else kind of felt the cold, so that was one element I thought was kind of interesting how they played that out. But for them, it ended up being a romantic moment because they actually got to spend time together with each other outside of the watchful eye of the other the servant of the house, or the butler, and the two lawyers that are constantly present towards the middle of the story, that are trying to make sure that Mike doesn't get cheated out of his inheritance, because both his parents were technically humans that had him on Mars. It's complicated. It's complicated. You have to read the story to know what's going on with that. That's the aspect I thought was romantic, or a part of the romance genre in that, because that's the first time in the story, right at the end of chapter 21, beginning of chapter 22, that Mike actually confesses that he actually understands love, and he understands like the why humans love and how he can be a part of that. I think that's the fourth time that him and the same character have actually kissed, and she makes a point to let him know, hey, he's a horrible kisser, but then she's more than willing to help him practice kissing. And then right after that, he informs her that he's in love with her, and she explains that she's kind of already known that he had those feelings, but she knew he wasn't really familiar with how to express those feelings, so he just came out and kind of blurted out, "Hey, I'm in love with you," and then that kind of goes from there. So I thought that was pretty interesting. That it doesn't really happen exactly how we picture things going in a romantic nature of confessing love for someone else, or a romantic love for someone else. But I mean, it worked for the story. The speculative fiction part of this, yes, this is considered a science fiction novel, Stranger in a Strange Land. But I think that the tropes that we're used to seeing in science fiction is not something that you see very rarely. Like, the author actually makes a point to not bog down the story with a lot of, fancy, 29th century science fiction things of interstellar travel, and gene manipulation technology, things that we think of when we think of science fiction. It's just really subtle things. Hey, they're building agricultural domes on Mars, and then filling them with modified oxygen to help things grow, and that's literally what it would say. It'd be like really small things to let you know, okay, it's just a reminder. Oh, by the way, we're in a sci-fi story. They're trying to terraform Mars. Oh, okay. and he goes right on back into what's going on what's going on in the present with the characters. You get to chapter 26, and they talk about how they're still using electronic means of voting. That's something that we do now in 2018, and in the past, I think 10, 15 years we've been using electronic voting, probably even longer. So that's something that doesn't change in the universe. As far as them cooking food is almost basically done in the exact same way. They actually in chapter, I want to say it's in chapter 20, 28, 29, where they explain that it's actually a skill to actually be able to cook on a wood burning stove and or an electric stove now. Like basically cooking meals by hand is actually a cherished skill now versus something we do on an everyday basis now. I mean, at some point in time, most people are still using the stove, or they're having someone else cook a meal for them. I mean, so I thought that was something that was kind of interesting. That things we take for as just everyday things in their world, being so far in the future, that's something that most people just don't do. They tend to go out and eat a lot, or have the meals delivered to them that are already made. They have no idea who makes them, because they're not worried about that. It's almost like the food delivery services that are subscription services that we have now. Hey, the person drops off the box, all the stuff's there. All you gotta do is put stuff together or heat it up, and then you're good to go. So it's kind of almost like the same thing. If we're talking about some of the politics and some of the philosophies of the world, so their world has actually become more of a world driven by interstellar corporations, and those corporations have if I had to relate it to a system that we have now, it's it would be more like lobbyists in a nutshell. Like, hey, we'll help this person get in office for rights to these neighborhoods, or these mining rights or things of that nature. So that's pretty much one of the main things I noticed about the story. That starts to kind of not be so much of an issue later on down the line, after not to hopefully spoil it for anybody, where Michael actually does get to where he's able to have conversations like a normal human, which people are always going to know he's the Martian, because he's on like every newspaper or media in the entire story. So I think that was something that was pretty interesting about it, is the fact that their world is driven literally by corporations. And I just realized that my timer is at like 8 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up.